Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hi everybody, new episode of Who Are You? And I'd like to welcome Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk. How are you, Tom? How you doing?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Buzzing with excitement ahead of this Sunday, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it is North London Derby Sunday, which is always nice. It's nice to see where we were and where we are now. Because there was a lot of upset in the fan base, wasn't there? And I watch you in the mornings most of the time. Just a little. I watch you in the mornings for your Gooner Talk most of the time, and you know we're having to fend off a lot of animosity type things. So, what's your thoughts moving forward?
Look, the best thing in the world is when Arsenal win. That's all I care about, to be honest. Is an Arsenal victory. You get into the secondaries, and I remember watching you and Sophie having a chat about this, and I remember Sophie saying that we've got the wins and now the performances need to come while we're getting the wins as well, and I'm kind of on that same track. And if the performances do come, great, but to be honest, with what we've got Sunday, again, just a win. Just give me a win.
Give me a W. Give me a W.
That's all I want.
Yeah. So, Tom, listen, I want to get straight into it because I know time is precious for you and I right now, especially as it's before Derby. So I've got 10 questions for you. And the first question, Tom, is what does Highbury mean to you as an Arsenal fan?
Yeah, I mean, Highbury for me is a missed opportunity. Because I remember speaking to you previously about this, and because I'm of a younger persuasion, I never managed to get to Highbury during playing days. I've been in Highbury since. I've been around it since the renovations and everything. But prior to me getting old enough to go to games, it was a massive missed opportunity. It's weird though, because, and I know that for a lot of people, despite not being, say, from England or living abroad, that when they come to the Arsenal, they feel home. And despite never going to Highbury, it just has that sense of home whenever I'm outside the ground, because it obviously still looks exactly the same outside, and how they've managed to keep it the same. And despite never having that connection physically of going there during a game day, it still feels like the real Arsenal. And whilst I love the Emirates, and I'm sure we'll come on to that in a bit, it doesn't have that same feel. It's almost like it smells different when you're there. It is very, very strange how you can be attached to something that you were never there for when it was in its heyday. But it is, and I suppose with nostalgia, that's how it goes. But yeah, it's both a missed opportunity, but yet still home for me.
Yeah. For me, and for the likes of people, I'm sure you speak to people every week who have been to Highbury and seen all the...
It's a killer.
You know, and the Emirates ain't the same, etc. But Highbury is the route, isn't it? It really is the route, with the history, the marble halls, the steps going up, you know, the ground looking the same, although it's been converted. So it's a really important route for all Arsenal fans. And some Arsenal fans who come out of Arsenal Station tend to go right. Maybe they should go there a little bit early and turn left, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've stayed in Highbury because our mutual friend Mike Feinberg has a couple of times. Magic Mike, yes, a couple of times he's rented out an apartment there, and I've had the pleasure of staying there too. So it's a great place to just be around, basically. Yeah,
fantastic. So growing up, Tom, who was your first favourite Arsenal player?
Well, I mean, I was 10 when we won the league as the Invincibles. Right. So I grew up, my childhood was the Invincibles. The late 90s, I was still a bit kind of young for. And whilst I was aware of it at the time, I wasn't able to kind of really grasp it. So it's not a boring, I was going to say it's a boring answer because it's pretty much the same as what a lot of people would say. But Thierry Henry obviously was big during when I was a kid. It was the player I had on my first Arsenal shirt. It was I didn't get my first Arsenal shirt, I don't think, till 2000 with a name. I got the 2004 one, which was the old classic kind of burgundy color. And then the next shirt I got, because my parents weren't like massively well off to buy shirts that are expensive. Yeah. And so 2006 was the next one I got, which obviously when we got to the Champions League final, the yellow away one with Thierry Henry on the back. And that's the first one with the name on the back I got. So he was kind of that first player. But like cognitively, when I'm like old enough and I'm now more aware of football, when I was getting into kind of my mid-teens, Thomas Rosicky was always the player that I kind of led towards. I don't even know why. I kind of followed him a little bit from when he was at Dortmund and then when he joined Arsenal. And yeah, it was just the number 7 shirt on the back of him, the fact that he, like Pires, had long hair, and just like it's that weird sense of taking over that kind of, not necessarily the same position, but just that kind of creative responsibility in the Arsenal team. And some of the goals he scored were great. The fact that he loved to score against Spurs. He scored in the first North London derby I went to when we beat them in the FA Cup in 2013. Because he nicked the ball off Danny Rose, I think, on the halfway line, ran straight through and chipped it over, I want to say, Brad Friedel, I think it might have been, that was in goal. But yeah, so Thomas Rosicky was the first one, and that attacking number 10 style player has always then been where I've lent towards for future favourites.
No, he was a quality player. Just injuries at times, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that curtailed his Arsenal
as
career.
with so many.
Yes, that curtailed his Arsenal career. Tom, how did you become a Gooner? Because it varies from person to person.
Yeah, my parents aren't Arsenal fans. My granddad was an Arsenal fan. He died before I was born, and so my nan would tell me kind of these stories about the fact that he was an Arsenal fan. But as I say, not from the most well-off background. They went to the local team, which I'm from Medway in Kent, so they went to Gillingham, and I had a season ticket for Gillingham when I was a little kid as well. But it would always be my nan mentioning about my granddad being an Arsenal fan. So I took that on. People can call me a bit of a glory hunter, and I wouldn't bat it away too badly, because at the end of the day, I never met my granddad, and I've been to Gillingham, and I still have kind of a following of Gillingham. But Arsenal has just been in, as I say, in my life, and always watched Arsenal on telly since I was so young. And so that came through that in that way, that it was my granddad that was the kind of influence. And then I managed to get to my first Arsenal game until I was about 17 or so, which is quite late, but yeah.
Well, you're keeping the legacy going for your granddad, aren't you? That's the other thing, because the vein is in the family. So all it needs is somebody to pick it up, Tom, and you picked it up, which is great.
Exactly. I mean, the tricky thing will come when eventually I have kids, because my other half is a Charlton fan, and her dad is a massive Charlton fan. Yeah. So there is going to be I can imagine as soon as the first kid comes along, there'll be a little Charlton shirt being like edged towards him from my father-in-law, or soon-to-be father-in-law. So that'll be interesting.
I could imagine. Yeah. Very well supported. So, okay, Tom, what do you make of the Emirates Stadium era at the Arsenal? Obviously, you've heard all the stories and about Highbury. Yeah. But what's your thoughts on the Emirates era right now?
Obviously, the Emirates is all I've really known from a maturer age, from an adult age. And obviously, I've grown up mainly with my main Arsenal support in life not being as title challengers, but as competitors for the top 4, with Arsene Wenger taking us to the Emirates. So I don't have that same measure of how far it's kind of dropped, as a lot of people older than me do, whilst I'm very much aware of it. But the Emirates I always feel a bit strange when I walk into the Emirates, because you do get that sense of like, this is an amazing stadium. It's not the same kind of romantic emotional connection as when I'm in and around Highbury, but it's still that kind of, it does take you back, because it is a hell of a structure, and it's a hell of a kind of a building. And the era of FA Cups, which is basically what the Emirates has been, it's an era of FA Cups more than anything. And the problem with it is because we've been there while we've regressed, and we've gone from a top 4 established side to now back-to-back 8th place finishes, it's very hard not to associate it with the idea of two things, one being that decline and the other one being kind of the Kroenke era of Arsenal. And unfortunately, that's kind of the way that I look at the Emirates era. Is it's a Kroenke era and it's an era of regression, unfortunately, but that's just factually what it is.
Yeah, it's tough to take as an Arsenal fan. Normally, you know, being up there, challenging in the top 4 every season. But listen, we're going to probably cover some of that later on. Yeah. What's your early experiences of Arsenal winning trophies?
So, as I say, the early 2000s is what I remember cognitively. The Invincible season was, because obviously back then you couldn't really, I never had Sky Sports in my house until my dad outright refused to have Sky Sports. So I was always limited to watching Match of the Day. And that was the only way that I could really watch the Arsenal most times, or if I was managed to sneak out with a couple of friends and get into a pub with their parents to watch a game sometimes. So I remember us winning the league in, as I say, 2004. But the earliest trophy that I remember us winning was the 2005 FA Cup, because that was obviously on TV, and so we didn't have to have a subscription to anything to watch it. And I remember that so plainly. And what I remember about that game the most of all was when Dennis Bergkamp headed the ball onto the crossbar to prevent Manchester United scoring. I think it was in extra time, and took it to penalties. I remember obviously all the penalty shootout and Vieira winning it and everything, but that moment of when Bergkamp headed it onto the crossbar from just underneath it to stop them, it was as if, like, in that moment when Man United had dominated us for the entire game, you knew we were going to win it. Like, it just was not United's day at all. And despite us really genuinely probably not deserving to win that cup final, we did, and it just felt like everything was going our way, and that is the earliest memory I have of an Arsenal trophy, is really genuinely 2005.
So don't you think we owed them a little bit after them beating us in the semi-final?
Yeah, of course.
Missed the penalty.
Yeah, of course. It's probably karma, isn't it? It's just paying them back, basically. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Tom, if there was one player who you'd love to have playing for Arsenal now, who would it be and why from the past?
It's really easy for me, and it's Patrick Vieira, because we just haven't replaced him. Like I feel like Thomas Partey is the closest we've come to replacing Patrick Vieira. But then I still want to see Patrick Vieira because we've not added to Partey.
Yes.
And a midfield pairing of Partey and Vieira is just like, that's unbelievable, like, to think of those two together. And I was talking about this on the channel the other day, kind of the debate around, a lot of Chelsea fans have started to try and put Kante into kind of the same breadth as Vieira. And I look at them as very different players anyway. They're very different, and their positions are very different. But obviously it's a rival thing. You want to try and get one over your rivals, so I can understand why they're doing it. But to think that Kante can be compared to Vieira just means you didn't watch Vieira. Like, you don't know Vieira and what he was about, the raw power and nature of his game, the way in which he would drive the ball forwards and just would.
It's everything, isn't it? Vieira had everything. And Kante's a wonderful player, Tom. He is a wonderful player at what he does, but he's no Vieira.
No, he's not a leader. He's not. He doesn't inspire. Like, he inspires in the sense that Kante's great at covering the pitch. He's great at tackling, great at doing it. He's basically having an extra player. He feels like you've got two players on the pitch at the same time, Kante. But Vieira inspires. Vieira is a force of nature, and Kante isn't that. Kante is a bit of a phenomenon, but he's not the force that Vieira was.
No, I agree with that, and you know that is a good debate. For them, Chelsea fans trying it on, but
they need a bit of history. Work. Come on, they need some history.
It'll never work. So, okay, Tom, what's your favourite Arsenal memories? What's your top 3 favourite Arsenal memories?
I mean, the earliest, as I say, memory of winning a trophy was with the FA Cup in 2005. It doesn't make my top 3 because I still was 11 years old, so I wasn't able to enjoy the games as much. Now, there's 3 memories that really come to mind. 2014, the FA Cup in 2014 was big. It was the 9-year trophy drought being ended. It was my first year of university. I was in the Wetherspoons with 30 people, none of whom were Arsenal fans. I was the only Arsenal fan in the entire Wetherspoons. Other pubs are available, by the way. But when that goal went in, when Ramsey scores, like, to stand up amongst 30 people that just didn't have that same feeling was just like, you felt like you were the only one who was able to enjoy that in that room of so many people. And it was great. And to be fair, by the time that we were at that point of we'd got it back from 2-0 down to 2-2, a lot of the room was kind of behind Arsenal in that sense. Like, there was no Hull fans there. It was just mainly kind of your big four teams. But even by that point, people were kind of wanting to see Arsenal do it. Arsenal were quite likable in a weird way back then. They aren't as much now, I don't think, in the wider context. But back then, when there was a 9-year trophy drought, it was. The other one is the 2012 Henry goal against Leeds when he returned.
At the Emirates.
Again, at the Emirates, 1-0 victory. Alex Song playing that ball through. Classic Henry finish. That's just my favourite thing to watch back. I think I've watched that back more than anything. Really? Of any other video, any other documentary, more than the Invincible season, more than the run to the Champions League final, which is a painful one, but I still do watch that back. Even 89, like, I watch 89 all the time, despite not even being alive. And I feel like I'm, as an Arsenal fan, there's a bit of a duty to go back and watch the history. And I do watch that 89, especially the film that Amy Lawrence made. I watch that all the time, but I still get so many feelings around Sierra, because he was my first favourite Arsenal player. And so when he did come back and score, that was a great one. And then the last one it's a little bit left field, and I don't think many people will share it. But it's mainly because of the social aspect. We beat Watford 2-0 in the league in 2018. And it's ironic the first time I met you, Kev, because we went at the Pins after that game. But the reason why that's one of my favourite memories is because, as I say, Magic Mike was over. It was one of the first times I'd really met the people that I'd been podcasting with for a fair few years. Friends like Ola and obviously meeting up with Lee Judges and then your fine self after the game too. And that was just a great day. And for me, being sociable and having your mates is one of the key things about going to football. So the memory for me of that, and also Petr Cech saving Troy Deeney's penalty, is always a nice factor. Always a nice thing.
Especially after what he was
the
spouting.
Coyotes thing, yes.
Yeah.
So after he said that, and so that was such a really nice moment. I love revenge, and it felt great when that happened, for sure.
No, I love that. And that really was a good day, because I remember being at the Pins and we're out there singing and all that, meeting all the boys. Yeah. There was a good load of us out there as well, weren't there, Tom?
There was. Yeah, it was a really... And Magic Mike spilled an entire pint down my brand new Arsenal shirt, which was wonderful. So, yeah.
I think he meant to do that, Tom. I think
Obviously, of course. That. Of course he did.
Of course. Okay. Question 8. Do you reckon the Arsenal hierarchy have been dishonest with the fan base?
When I read this question... I had to think really hard about it, because it's very quick, because of the hatred, to go, yeah, I've been dishonest. And I didn't want it to be a knee-jerk reaction. I wanted to consider this and think back to what they've said or done that would make me think they've been dishonest, or rather they've said something which just was a mistake. And I think there is a difference between being dishonest and making a mistake. Now, when Josh Kroenke very famously said, "Be excited," I think that was a mistake more than being dishonest. Yeah. I genuinely think that when he said that, he had confidence that better things were going to happen, mainly out of naivety of not really knowing too much about the situation then. Now, from that point, and from some of the interviews from, I think it was 2019 when that interview took place, the dishonesty, I think, has then started to grow. Some of the things like in the fans forum after the Super League fiasco, where they said they wanted to build a better contact with the fans, better communication. And so when they released a press release, I think it was this year, in which Josh Kroenke said that there would be 3 fan forums a year and that he would attend at least one of them. That for me is a dishonest statement, because saying the words "at least one of those 3" is dishonest, because it builds up an expectation that he could attend all 3 of those fans forums. And that's really important to me, because you've promised the fans more communication, the fact that you want to build bridges after the Super League fiasco. And so to only make one day, or rather 6 hours, or even not even that, I think it was 2 hours as the fan forum out of 365 days in a year, instead of committing to the 3 fans forums that you're setting up, I think it's despicable. I think it's utterly despicable and really insulting to the fans, and that's dishonesty. So I did consider that question very hard and not just knee-jerk reaction to that, but it's both dishonesty and naivety, I think, is their tenure.
Tom, do you know when obviously leaving Highbury and going to the Emirates, and the narrative from the top was, we're making this move to challenge the likes of the Bayern Munichs and the Barcelonas and Real Madrid. Do you think that was more naive, or do you think that was dishonest?
Well, I mean, the Kroenkes got involved with the club in 2007, so it was more Ivan Gazidis that said around the Bayern Munich thing. So if that...
Yeah, but he gets told from the top what's going on.
Of course. I think that the whole Bayern Munich thing and the whole competing, I have no doubt in my mind that they moved to the Emirates to compete. Like, I don't think they could have done it at Highbury because the revenue associated with a stadium the size of Highbury. That's not to say that I wouldn't have loved us to continue playing at Highbury and for us to be competing. I just don't think logistically and economically it would have made sense in the climate that we find ourselves. The argument against that is that despite moving to the Emirates, we've still regressed and we've arguably fallen even further away from the Bayerns of this world. I think they were naive. I don't think that was as dishonest, because I think it was more naive in the sense I don't think they expected the investment that came from Chelsea and City. I don't think they expected us to fall away as much as we did, or to have as little spending power as we did throughout all those years. And I don't think they expected to have to hire and fire as many people as they have after Arsene Wenger left. So I wouldn't say dishonest. I would again say that's ignorance and naivety more than dishonesty.
Okay. So if you had a chance to speak to the owner directly, what would you say to him, Tom?
Well, it depends who you're talking about, because I don't know who the owner of Arsenal is, I'll be honest. I don't know if it's Josh, and I don't know if it's Stan.
It's Stan. Because Stan's the owner. Josh is his son.
Yeah, I know, but when I say...
I'm talking about Stan Kroenke.
Okay. If I was able to sit down with Stan, I would ask him specific questions about Arsenal's history. I would ask him trivia, is what I would ask him. I wouldn't say, are you going to do this, you're going to do that? Because we've just discussed, dishonesty comes from the top.
Yeah.
I want categoric proof that this person has not integrated himself into the Arsenal kind of system, the Arsenal way of life. And so the way you find that out is if you ask a person about the club. It's the way that I was listening to a podcast about an American owner trying to buy Manchester United, and one part of the media asked that owner, or the prospective owner, a question at the time about a certain player in Man United. I can't remember who it was. It was a left back. I can't remember who the player was. And they were like, I don't know who that is. My expertise aren't in football. And so the newspaper the next day was with the headline, prospective Manchester United owner says, my expertise aren't in football. And it collapsed the entire takeover of Manchester United. So that for me is the key thing, is what I would ask them, because you can sit there and say, oh, I'd ask them, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But you're not going to get an answer. You're not going to get anything from that. I'd rather get a headline coming from a journalistic point of view to say, look, this guy knows jack about Arsenal. Yeah. He knows nothing. So that's what I would ask them, I'd ask them trivia. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they've been in around the club for a long time now.
Oh, I'd ask them some classic. So
even
trivia.
if they answered your questions, that might not satisfy.
Maybe.
But that's a smart thing to do. Right. We're on to your last question. If you could change 3 things at the Arsenal, any 3 things, Tom, what would they be?
The first one is obvious, and I'm sure it's one that if you ask this question, it's the ownership.
The ownership. Quite a few people
obviously
say the ownership. Yeah.
Yes, the ownership is the clear one. Or to be fair, do you say the ownership, or do you say the mindset of the ownership? Do you say, because they're
the ownership?
It's an interesting point though, because you say, do you change? Because there's always this big argument about who then replaces them, isn't there? So I have a lot of issues with some of the backgrounds of other billionaires that have been reported to take over Arsenal. Would I swap the Kroenkes for an owner with associations to human rights atrocities? I'm not sure that I would. And that's not to say that the Cronkies don't have their own issues. They certainly do. But then it's almost becomes in your control that you're making that decision to switch them for someone with association. So it becomes actually kind of on you. So that's why I mentioned about the mindset, because if, say, it was the Cronkies that actually genuinely turned things around and did change the way in which they run the club and invested into the things we want them to do, at that point, I can't turn around and be like, get lost, because they're actually doing things. They're being proactive to change it. So that's why I'm careful about that one. But it's still an obvious one to say, just the way in which the club's run by the ownership and at the minimum, the ownership. The other one is safe standing at the Emirates. Anything that I feel can change the atmosphere of the ground, anything that I think can get it as close to, it never will be the same as, but as close to what Highbury was as possible, the club should be making and taking steps to achieve that. So absolutely, if safe standing is one of the ways that we can achieve that, then safe standing would be one of those. But anything that's going to increase the... Enhance is a good word. Enhance the tribalism, the classic football, just nature of a raucous crowd. When you look at some of the games in Europe, you go to Dortmund, you go to places like that, you go to Salzburg and see how some of those fans like act inside the stadium. That's what I want, the support, the really kind of tribal support that's intimidating for opposition sides. And then the last one is ticket prices. And that sounds really trivial. But
do you know what, Tom? Everybody I've interviewed have said the prices.
I think it's something that we as fans share, because we feel we're getting mugged off.
Yeah.
We feel we're paying for something that's not relative to what we're seeing or what we have seen. Yeah. And that whilst we've regressed, if anything, those prices have only gone up. Yeah. So it's not fair, and it's not a fair treatment of fans. And so that's why I say ticket prices is one of those key things, yeah.
Tom, effortless. It was effortless. Who are you, Tom? It's nice to get a little bit of insight into who you are and what your thoughts are on the Arsenal and how you became an Arsenal fan, which is thanks to your granddad, which is brilliant. Tom, I salute you. I look forward to watching you on the Gooner Talk, and thanks for giving me your time.
No problem.